philosophy of pessimism. Because of something like samsara, because of constant change. And for Schopenhauer, that you can't be happy if your pleasure is just so impermanent. Everything is changing, there's nothing concrete. Now, however, he was not quite as radical. Can you hear okay? It's not quite as radical as the Buddhistic point of view, because what Schopenhauer did was he looked at Plato and the Platonic ideals, although you're familiar with Plato, and he actually wanted to believe in meditating upon ideals as a way of escaping the impermanence of existence. The irony about Schopenhauer is actually when he developed some fame finally later in his life, late in his life really. From what I read, he was anything but a monk. But anyway, do as I say, not as I do as I say. Anyway, that's what I read. I don't mean to besmirch the memory of Schopenhauer. Right now, Schopenhauer also, his morality, his ethic, is called the ethic of compassion. So for Schopenhauer, his view is that all selfless, because it has to do with all morality is based on compassion, selflessness. So again, that's another similarity with Buddhism. The question is the connection between, his pessimism and his compassion, I think is an interesting contrast because I don't think it necessarily jives. And I think there are a lot of inconsistencies in Schopenhauer's work. But his ethics was an ethic of selflessness, compassion. Now, as I started to say a moment ago, Nietzsche was exactly, he began his career as very much a follower of Schopenhauer, but he became a critic of Schopenhauer. And whereas Schopenhauer was an advocate of compassion and altruism, Nietzsche was an advocate of self-regarding virtues. Nietzsche quotes, here's a quote from Nietzsche: "Faith in oneself, pride in oneself, a fundamental hostility and irony against selflessness belong to noble morality." Now, we have Schopenhauer, who's the supreme compassion-based ethicist, and we have Nietzsche, who is an egocentric, extols the virtue of the ego, shall we say. Can't we say that they're both wrong? Can't we say that they both have an imbalanced view of morality? On one side, with Schopenhauer, he tilts heavily towards compassion, altruism, other regarding virtue, characteristics, qualities of morality, whereas Nietzsche is more self-regarding, virtues of self-love. Love thy neighbor as thyself, as we say in the Bible, in Leviticus. Doesn't that put it in better perspective? Because if you love thy neighbor as thyself, aren't we talking about loving others and loving ourselves? Doesn't that, and I do believe that's a perfect statement, logically. Because it makes perfect sense, and then you have multiple relations between yourself and relations with other people, and there's a constant balancing act between your other regarding and self-regarding. So again, I'm trying to build a theme here. You have Descartes. Well, first we opened up with the point about multiple relationships between others, and then the relationship with yourself. That statement, that question that John was answering. Into talking about from there into Buddhism, Hinduism, and the Atman, and it's Hinduism and the Atman, and Buddhism and the An-Atman, the A-N-Atman, which is actually the non-self, and Schopenhauer and compassion. and Nietzsche and self-regarding qualities of morality. I wrote something down here about Schopenhauer. Schopenhauer discusses, he does not seem to recognize the self-regarding dimensions of morality, and he thinks it's impossible to violate the duty to self, or the duty of self-love. When he says that the love that each cherishes for himself is assumed beforehand. Here's the question: here's the question. Schopenhauer said the love that each cherishes for himself is assumed beforehand. Is that true? Does anyone have an opinion about that?
I think it's pretty clear that there are lots of, maybe not lots, but there are people who hate themselves.
Right. Exactly. I think we all need self-interestedness. Having an interest in your own well-being is, I think, almost universally accepted. But the word selfish means, I think, that it's your self-interest with disregard for the interests of anyone else. In the case of Ayn Rand, I think she knew exactly what she was saying. Now, and I think it's kind of butchery of the English language, because she wrote a book called The Virtue of Selfishness. So that's the extreme. That she went way further than Nietzsche, actually, of glorifying to the point that she would call it selfish. Of course, she would argue that's actually rational self-interest. She would actually try to argue that her virtue of selfishness can be rationalized, so it makes sense. In any case, I feel that most people believe that morality, if you really get down to it, has something to do with genuine compassion and altruism as well as self-love. I think self-love and compassion and altruism are not incompatible. So the thing is, how do you make a balance there? You understand it? Yeah. Okay. Is selfless self-interest possible? In order to achieve a state of selflessness, it would first be necessary for us to experience self-interest, because how can you be selfless if you don't have something to, before we let go of it, we have to know what it is. There are two separate questions there. One is metaphysical. Can you actually be selfless if you never knew what being selfish or self-interested was first? Because it's a little bit like, you know what cold is without first knowing what hot is. And is it possible to be selfless without first knowing self-interest? Elizabeth, a long time ago when we had a little email exchange, you recommended a book by William Theodore de Barry called Learning for Oneself. I did a little bit of looking into it. And there's a line there that is very, very interesting to me. In Barry's book, he has a line that says, "Learning is for the self, but is not selfish." Learning is for the self, but is not selfish. Do you understand that? Yes. In a nutshell, I would say, in my view, that's absolutely correct and exactly the point I'm trying to make. Because there is an equation of when you're acting in your own self-interest out of goodness, right, out of love and right livelihood and in a sense of moral integrity, can you not be said you're ipso facto acting for others at the same time? And you're learning, and you devote all your time to learning, and then it turns out that your work, produces, the cure for cancer, or the new theory of everything, or whatever you want to call it. It's for others. So, for example, isn't just learning itself intrinsically good, and something that's intrinsically good is intrinsically for yourself as well as for others? Just throwing that one out there.